Hi everybody, welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra. Today, a very special edition of John's Briefs. I'm sitting here at my computer. I have been sent the video from the armed attorneys 11 bajillion times about why they say not to carry a trauma medical kit. And I want to talk to you today. As much as I respect Emily and Richard, the armed attorneys, I think on this one, they've missed it. Firearms Legal Protection is who I trust to help me after a use of force incident. If you're a Firearms Legal Protection member, I will also be on your team as a consulting expert, and you can attend our monthly Active Self-Protection training seminars for free. Check out all they offer to their members at the link below. The video in question, I've put a link to it in the description. It's on the Armed Attorneys YouTube channel. I'm a subscriber to Armed Attorneys. I recommend you subscribe to them too. I think they've got a lot of good stuff to say, particularly in the legislation part and the ATF rules part. They cover a lot of interesting stuff there, stuff I certainly don't cover, and I'd recommend that you watch them. The armed attorneys, Emily Taylor and Richard Hayes, are both attorneys in Texas, and they are former prosecutors in the Galveston County District Attorney's Office. Now they are both partners in the same law firm there in Galveston County in Houston, Texas. And so, I mean, they know a thing or two. They've been through the prosecution phase. They know criminal defense because they've been on both sides of it. And so that's a very good thing. And I think that from everything I've watched of them and seen from them, very level-headed, very pro-Second Amendment, very good in that vein of armed self-defense. And so, I'm a subscriber and occasionally comment over there, and I recommend you do too. Now, let's also talk about what it is we are talking about here and what we're not talking about here. What they are not talking about is stuff like this. So this is our range kit, right? This is the one that I wear on my particular waist. You can tell because it has the Slowpoke Rodriguez patch. He may be slow, but he pack a gun. And this is our range kit that we sell at Mountain Man Medical. Again, I did have somebody when I commented over on the Armed Attorneys channel say, well, that's from a guy who makes money selling med kits. No, we don't. Everything that would come to us from these goes to charity. So thanks for that. So that's the range kit right there. This is my kind of on body. This is our big ASP trauma kit with Mountain Man Medical. This would be more for the car. So I keep this one in my pickup truck. Went and got it for this. I keep this one on me whenever I'm teaching. This is my range kit. It is mounted on my belt and kept on my person. Those aren't what we're talking about. They both agreed. Those are both great ideas to have. We're in agreement there. The one they're interested in is this ankle medical kit. So I carry this every day. I literally took it off my ankle because my wife and I were out this afternoon, took it off my ankle in order to make this video. It starts as a Wilderness Tactical ankle cuff. It is stocked by Mountain Man Medical. You can buy it complete or you can put one together yourself, and I recommend everybody do. Now, let me also say, hey, good, well-intentioned people can disagree about stuff, right? And I'm not trying to start no beef with the armed attorneys, or I'm not trying to, start a greasers versus socias or whatever, the Sharks versus the Jets, none of that stuff. I think that Emily and Richard are good people, at least everything that I've seen from them. I just think in this particular case that I think that they're seeing it wrong. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually let it play a little bit, and I'll stop it at various places, and I'm gonna put a couple of little clips on what they actually said to let them speak in their words, but I would recommend that you go and watch the whole video so you get the whole context. That said, I want to say at the outset that this is why, and my big thing to you here, this is why you want to make sure that your attorney is experienced in criminal defense when you're talking about criminal defense issues, but also that they are willing to consult with experts in particular fields over which the attorney themselves are not an expert. Remember, attorneys are experts in the law and legalese and the procedures of court and criminal prosecutions and civil cases. They are not necessarily experts by being attorneys in self-defense. They are not experts in medical stuff. They're not experts in firearms, even if they are an expert in firearms law doesn't make them an expert in firearms. And that's why folks like I exist, that, I do stuff that is expert witness work for attorneys to help them to understand things. In particular, when I do expert witness work, I tend to do it in use of force law and in analysis of use of force cases, firearms, and sometimes in ancillary topics like this on why a self-defender would carry one of these. Because Emily and Richard's entire argument is they're worried about you having a trauma kit and using it on somebody you just had to shoot, or having a trauma kit on your person and not using it on someone you had to shoot, and that jamming you up in prosecution. Now, the reason that that's not the issue is you're assuming that I carry a trauma medical kit in order to render aid to somebody that I just had to shoot. That's not at all why any self-defender as a private citizen for sure would carry a trauma medical kit. You carry a trauma medical kit for yourself and for your loved ones in case, God forbid, you get in a defensive encounter and you get hurt. You are the one who ends up being shot or badly injured. We see that on the channel, on the big channel, quite regularly. And so why I carry a trauma medical kit is in case I get shot during a defensive encounter, or I get cut during a defensive encounter, or my wife or my child or an innocent that gets hurt, then we can absolutely help them. In fact, if you go on the Main Asp YouTube channel, there's right now almost 150 videos on the playlist for the use of first aid in self-defense, or the need for first aid in self-defense. And that's not using it on bad guys, that's using it on you or on a loved one who gets hurt in the midst of a defensive encounter. So that's what this whole discussion needs to be around. Now we got to talk about the rest of that, but when your whole paradigm is, why would you carry something that with the purpose of, oh, I'm gonna go render aid or I'm not gonna render aid? Well, that's not what it's for as a private citizen. It's for me and it's for my loved ones. I note that in law enforcement context, when a law enforcement officer takes somebody into custody, then they have a legal obligation to render medical aid to that person and to try to preserve their life. Well, the reason that they do that is that once they get them in cuffs, now they know, they've searched them and gotten them in cuffs, and they know that they're safe and they can then render aid in a safe manner. I'm a private citizen. I don't carry cuffs, and I wouldn't recommend that you carry cuffs as a private citizen. I can't, in any capacity, verify that it is safe, and my mission as a private citizen, that we have said many times on the channel, is to break contact with a deadly threat. And so the second that they run off, I run off, or if they go down, I get out of there. And so I'm not gonna be in the vicinity of somebody who I just shot. And so that the whole premise of the problem is a non sequitur. Now, I also said that, hey, this is why you would go and talk to an expert witness about this, and somebody who's an expert in some of these areas. So this is probably one of those things where you say, hey, I'm carrying this for me, and I can explain that to a prosecutor and explain it to the attorney. That's what my job would be as the expert witness, is to explain to an attorney, well, wait a minute, why would somebody carry a trauma medical kit? I would think, why would you want to give medical aid to the person that you just shot? Oh, you wouldn't. You would use that, and the industry standard is, as a private citizen, this is for you and for your loved ones in case you're hurt, because we see that happen in real life defensive encounters with not huge regularity, but enough regularity that you might want to be prepared for it, in addition to having something like this to be prepared for non-defensive encounters like car wrecks, or somebody puts a hand through a window or something like that by accident, they fall or something like that. They hurt themselves badly, we got major traumatic bleeding, we can solve that problem. That's why you carry this, not for the other side. And of course, we would educate the attorneys, and then the attorneys could go talk to the prosecutors, and hopefully they abandon the nonsensical issue that, well, why didn't you render aid? Because it wasn't safe for me to do so. Or why would you render aid? Well, the other side of that is I'm a good, sane, sober, moral, prudent person. So let's just say I come to a place and I come to an attitude that says, well, I knew that it was completely safe because when I shot him, he yeeted the gun off into the wild blue yonder. My wife, got the gun, picked it up and tossed it or unloaded it, so he doesn't have a gun anymore, and he lost consciousness. And so I was able to quickly search him and realize that he wasn't armed with anything else. And I value life, and I value people, having the maximum possibilities to reclaim their life. And so I thought that I could help if I could, and I did. Now, I wouldn't recommend that, but I don't think it's evidence of mens rea. I think that's kind of a bad argument. All right, let's look at the rest of their arguments. There's a couple of things that they said in here. I'm gonna let them speak and then I'll react to.
And trauma kits, I'd say probably more popular than ever.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's lots of sort of tactical medicine classes out there that'll teach you how to use one. They're cheap and easy to
very affordable.
find. Yeah, absolutely.
They're not cheap. You got to get a good one. They're not cheap. Also, as far as good tactical medicine classes, there's only a couple companies that I know that do it. Make sure Lone Star Medics or Dark Angel Medical, those would be your first two for sure.
You want to save that life, but I don't think anyone thinks like, well, I might have to use my gun and then I'll use it. So it's not really a self-defense preparedness, right?
Right.
It's just emergency preparedness.
It's absolutely self-defense preparedness. That's exactly what I carry it for myself and my loved ones.
I mean, when we look more towards self-defense, that's where I think trauma kits are not a good idea.
Yeah, they definitely might not be.
People would be mad at me for saying that, but I honestly believe that. If I have a client who gives in a self-defense shooting, I do not want them to have a trauma kit on their person.
So that's a problem. That statement to me, if I get a client who's in a self-defense shooting, I don't want them to have a trauma medical kit. So this is a difference between somebody who looks at things purely from the legal perspective, and I'm going to have to defend you in court, versus somebody who thinks about both the fight and the fight after the fight, right? So my focus is on the fight itself, with some focus on the fight after the fight. Her focus is the fight after the fight. If somebody gets in a gunfight, I want them to have trauma medical on their person simply and 100% in case they get hurt, because we need to preserve their life to get them to the fight after the fight. And I think the big thing here that I'm seeing is that maybe Emily's not considering the fact that you might get shot in your defensive encounter. We see it. We see people take major hemorrhagic bleeding and need help. And so I want them to have it, not because of maybe we're going to have to explain it to the jury. We will. But because it could save your life in a defensive gunfight.
You have a trauma kit and you use it. If I'm a prosecutor, and Richard and I, of course, are former prosecutors, so we know how to think dirty. Not like, you know what I mean? But like, we know like how to twist things against the self-defender. And I think that if I'm that prosecutor, I'm going to say, you shot someone and then you immediately ran over to save their life. You know what that says to me? Consciousness of guilt.
So okay, so she says, hey, I've been a prosecutor, so I know the dirty tricks, and they're gonna say, aha, consciousness of guilt. Well, do your job as a defense attorney. Get in there, and when your client has to take the stand, which they're gonna have to take the stand in order to get the self-defense jury instructions read anyways, to say, why did you use your medical kit? Well, because I value life, and the threat had ended, and those things. So if you've gone into that phase where you decided to, then you gotta make the counter argument, and you wanna show that the prosecutor's being a dirtbag, just like the defense team was able to do about Thomas Binger in the Rittenhouse case. You want to get in there and show that. So you go, well, the prosecutor can use it. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's a valid one, and it's your job as the defense attorney to then argue to the jury the opposite and to show them why that's not the case.
I think what would be more low-hanging fruit for a prosecutor is just say, this guy's a lunatic.
Right, yeah. He was just, that's their go-to, right? Anytime if you have more than one firearm on you, if you have anything unusual, it's going to be, this guy is a crazy nut job who was looking to get into a shooting situation. Right. He was just dying to have to, use this stuff. And so he created the situation. We've talked about that before.
I think that's a silly argument. And the reason I think it's a silly argument is life-saving equipment makes me a lunatic. So first of all, almost every police officer in America carries a tourniquet today. Why? Because they need to be able to save life. Our job is to save life. And again, this is where an expert witness and an expert consultant comes in and helps understand why you would do that, and then present that in their disclosures, in their expert disclosures to the prosecution, to hopefully get them to abandon that idea to begin with. And if it ends up in court, you can just literally eviscerate the prosecution over that because you're a lunatic who was looking to create a solution, a condition. No, I'm not. I had that just in case to be able to save life, and saving life is a moral good.
You have no duty to render aid. You do have this trauma kit. You don't render aid. What do you see a prosecutor saying about that?
That's where prosecutors are very sneaky, because they're going to say, you had a trauma kit on you. You could have helped them, and you didn't because you wanted them to die.
Okay, I think that's a poor argument as well. And again, as the defense attorney, you're just going to get after it. Well, they're going to say you wanted him to die because you shot him. Right? We're assuming you won a defensive gunfight and you shot a guy. Well, you didn't use first aid. No, again, a good explanation I need to provide to the finder of fact, whether that's the judge or a jury of my peers. What I did was reasonable. And again, as a private citizen, this is where a great expert witness would come in and help to educate your team of attorneys, to educate in the disclosures and in the depositions. So we don't generally do depositions in criminal cases, but on the civil side, the defense attorneys or the other side attorneys or the prosecutors, and then stand in front of the jury in the testimony and say, this is why a good person would do this. This is not this idea of why would they not? Because they don't have cuffs on them. They can't guarantee that it's safe, and they broke contact, which is their mission as a private citizen. So they weren't there to render aid because they ran off on purpose and called 911 to get to safety. And I think that's a pretty easy argument.
Remember, if you are involved in a self-defense shooting, you can do nothing right in the eyes of the prosecutor, right? Let's hearken all the way back to 2021 at this point. I'm thinking about Kyle Rittenhouse.
Right.
He had Full Metal Jacket, right? Ammunition. And they made that into like the biggest scary bugaboo in the entire world. Where,
Right.
like,
So again, Kyle Rittenhouse, you brought Kyle up, okay? And here's my big thing. You want to talk about trauma kits? Look at the picture of Kyle Rittenhouse as he is about to be in his second defensive gunfight. What do you see on him? That big bag. You know what that big bag was? It was a huge medical kit. Kyle was there rendering medical aid to people who needed it at the riots there that night. And so he had this humongous medical kit and then ends up in 2 distinct defensive gunfights with multiple people shot, and Kyle ran off, didn't provide aid. And do you notice that Thomas Binger didn't make that an issue at trial? Why? Because he immediately jumped up and kept running off because it wasn't safe for him, and he tried to surrender to police and tried to get some more help. So because there was not safety there, he ran off. So I think actually introducing Kyle Rittenhouse's defensive gun uses, the fact that he had a monstrous trauma kit on him, didn't use it, and didn't get prosecuted for that, and the prosecutor didn't make that a big to-do, is telling.
it doesn't matter what you do. It is going to be used against you.
Okay, if it doesn't matter what I do and it's gonna be used against me, then I'd rather have my trauma kit to protect me and my loved ones from a major wound and a major hemorrhagic incident, whether that's car wreck related or defensive gun use related. And whether I have it or not, whether I use it or not, the prosecutor can use that against me. I'd rather have it in order to have the capabilities.
I would say the takeaway, and we see this with function-enhancing modifications to firearms and non-function-enhancing modifications to firearms, it's when you have something out of the ordinary. I'd say most folks don't carry a trauma kit with them every single day.
That's not true. Again, the standard here, why do I carry hollow points? Because my local law enforcement agency carries hollow points because they consider it a good idea in order to not overpenetrate. That's why I do as well. Why would you carry trauma medical on your person? The average law enforcement officer does. They carry at least a tourniquet on them to stop major hemorrhagic bleeding and protect life. I carry it for the same reason, for myself and for my loved ones. Now, many officers also have a bigger kit in their car that after they take a suspect into custody, if they've got injuries, they'll bring that kit out to use it to try to preserve life. I'm not going back in there for that because I don't have the safety net of partners, of cuffs, and of an ambulance on the way that quickly, and so I just broke contact. So I think that it's not out of the blue, and I think plenty of good Americans carry those things. And I think the same argument's gonna be made before the jury that why were you carrying a gun? Well, wait a minute, you're a lunatic, that's weird and out of the blue. No, it's not, it's normal. Normal people carry firearms. Good, sane, sober, moral, prudent people carry firearms. And in that same vein, good, sane, sober, moral, prudent people carry the means of protecting life, and that includes trauma medical.
When you see something a little bit out of the ordinary, there's a tendency for prosecutors and juries to just kind of latch onto this stuff, even though it might be the responsible thing to do.
Exactly right. And that's really the sad part is that, is it responsible to carry a trauma kit? Yes.
Ta-da! So now it's your job, defense attorney, to explain that well. That's why you use something like an expert witness. That's why you use somebody who is an expert in the use of force that understands this is why and how its range of use was designed to be used. This is why somebody in this condition would do that. They educate the jury. That's what they do, and that's why you want to have that. Sometimes even as the defense attorney, you want to have that so that you can kind of get this stuff in mind yourself as you build your own case.
Would I advise my clients who are just out there in the world to carry it just in anticipation of a self-defense event? No, absolutely not.
I gotta tell you, Emily, that statement right there means I probably wouldn't want you on my legal team until you got educated to know better. I think that this is why, for instance, so you guys know I'm a consulting expert for firearms legal protection, and this is some of the stuff that I provide for them to say, this is why a good person would do that, this is why that would be okay. And again, I do think somewhat it's tilting after windmills because we saw it in Rittenhouse's case, which is obviously a major national case, and Thomas Binger was, criminally incompetent as an attorney in every way as a prosecutor and used every underhanded trick in the book and didn't use that one. So I think it's kind of tilting after windmills.
I don't want that to be something that the jury latches onto.
Yeah.
You're right.
I think probably range bag appropriate.
Range bag appropriate.
Vehicle.
Vehicle appropriate.
Yeah, vehicle appropriate.
Don't put it in your backpack and carry it around with you.
Yeah.
There, I said.
Don't put it on your backpack. Don't put it in your backpack. You're right. Put it on your ankle. Better. Okay, so a couple things. Number one, I got nothing but respect for the armed attorneys. I think that Emily and Richard seem like good people. I think they tried to do a good job. I think in this particular case, they just stepped outside their lane just a little bit. It happens to the best of us, right? I'm not mad at them. I'm not trying to make no beef. I like a lot of their videos. I just think they missed here. I mean, sometimes you're going to swing and miss, right? They put up hundreds of videos, and if they swing and miss on one of them, gosh, man, it happens to the best of us. I'm still going to carry my ankle medical kit with me every single where I go. Certainly the, belt kit and the big asp kit in the truck are going to stay as well. I think that, in a broader sense, this is why I want to have somebody like Firearms Legal Protection behind me, to have not only attorneys who know firearms law, but to be able to bring in experts as part of that, and to be able to retain those experts to give expertise in those fields. They give it not only to the jury on the stand, they give it to the prosecution in disclosure, and they also give it even to your defense team to help them to understand the issues and build a case. In this particular case, I really do think that the overarching problem, they acknowledge in the very beginning that, well, you could save, somebody's life that you love, or somebody else in a bystander in an effect. They don't think about yourself, that you might get shot in a defensive gunfight. And the fact is, just like cops carry medical on their person for themselves and for their partners, you carry it for yourself and for your partners as a general rule. So I'm gonna keep carrying the trauma medical. I think that the risks are few. I do think that this is why, things like the attorney that you choose, incredibly important, super helpful. And certainly if I was in Houston, they would be ones that I would want to talk to. But having some good consulting experts, super helpful as well. And that is why I just think they missed on this one. Appreciate it, you guys.